It began with a handshake. A single, casual gesture that sealed the start of a business partnership I thought would change my life for the better. His name was Daniel, and he was charming in a way that made people drop their guard. He had the easy smile of a man who'd seen success and wanted to share it, the kind of man who looked you in the eye as if your words were the most important thing in the world. I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I had been running my small design firm for 3 years, scraping by, juggling clients, chasing invoices, doing everything myself. Daniel came in like a lifeline. He promised funding, connections, and a plan to take my business to the next level. He spoke about partnership and shared vision as if they were sacred vows. We signed papers I didn't read closely enough, and suddenly, he was in my office every day, making big decisions and introducing me to important people who shook my hand as if I'd already made it. For a while, things were good. Better than good. Projects flowed in, the office expanded, and my name started to appear in industry magazines. I was busy, happy, and foolish enough to think nothing could go wrong. But slowly, I began to notice cracks. Daniel would host meetings without telling me. Client payments went directly into accounts I didn't have access to. When I asked questions, he'd smile that same disarming smile and say, "Don't worry, I've got it handled." One day, I walked into the office to find my name missing from the front door. In its place was a shiny new plaque, Grayson Creative Solutions, Daniel's name in bold letters underneath. My stomach dropped. The receptionist, who used to greet me with coffee, wouldn't meet my eyes. I found my office locked. When I confronted Daniel, he leaned back in his chair and, without a trace of guilt, told me it wasn't my company anymore. According to the papers I'd signed, I had transferred majority ownership to him in exchange for his investment. Legally, he owned everything: my business, my clients, even the designs I had created. I left that day with nothing but my laptop bag. No office. No clients. No savings, because the profits had been funneled into operational expenses I couldn't track. For 2 weeks, I sat in my apartment, staring at the walls, wondering how I could have been so naive. I replayed every conversation, every meeting, looking for signs I'd missed. And then I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started planning. Daniel was greedy, but more than that, he was arrogant. He thought he'd beaten me because he had my company on paper. What he didn't have was my brain or my network. I still had contacts who trusted me more than they'd ever trust him. Quietly, I reached out to my old clients, explaining just enough for them to understand the truth without making it sound like I was begging. I promised them quality work, personally handled, and at better rates. They came back one by one. But that wasn't enough. I wanted more than survival. I wanted him to feel what it was like to lose everything. I began watching him, tracking his moves in the industry. He was expanding fast, taking risks with other people's money, and I knew eventually he'd overreach. When the right opportunity came, I struck. A mutual contact told me Daniel was pitching for a massive contract with a luxury brand, a deal that would put him in a whole new league. The only problem? He didn't have the creative chops to deliver what they wanted. So I offered my services anonymously through a small shell company I'd set up. He took the bait, hiring my team to produce the concept work for his pitch. We worked around the clock, creating something so perfect it would be impossible for the brand to say no. On the day of the presentation, I made my move. I contacted the brand directly, revealing my identity and the fact that the work Daniel was about to present as his own was actually mine. I sent them proof, timestamps, drafts, email chains. The brand canceled their meeting with him and invited me to present instead. By the end of the week, the contract was mine. The fallout was immediate. Word spread through the industry about what he'd done to me, about how he'd been caught passing off stolen work. Clients started pulling out. Investors backed away. Within months, Grayson Creative Solutions was nothing but a hollow shell, drowning in debt. The last time I saw him, he was sitting alone in a cafe, staring into a cup of coffee as if it might hold the answer to his problems. He didn't see me walk past. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I already had everything I wanted: my clients, my reputation, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd beaten him at his own game. He cheated me out of everything once. But in the end, I took it all back and made sure he'd never do it to anyone else. It began with a handshake, the kind people give when they want to make you feel safe. Daniel's hand was warm, steady, and confident, the kind of grip that promised reliability. He had a knack for drawing you in, for making you believe you were the most important person in the room. I was tired of struggling to keep my small design firm afloat, tired of chasing late payments, tired of the constant balancing act between rent, payroll, and my own meager salary. When Daniel walked in, wearing that perfectly tailored suit and an expression that mixed charm with just enough vulnerability to make you want to trust him, I thought I'd been handed a lifeline. He said he'd been following my work for months, admiring my vision. He spoke about partnerships as if they were love affairs, built on mutual respect, passion, and ambition. Within a week, we had drawn up papers. I didn't pore over them the way I should have. I saw them as a formality, a bridge to a better future. His investment would give me breathing room. His connections would bring bigger clients. His experience in business strategy would turn my creative talent into a powerhouse brand. The first months were intoxicating. New clients arrived with checks bigger than any I'd seen before. My work was featured in glossy magazines. Daniel threw parties to celebrate our success, parties filled with influential people who shook my hand and told me they'd heard great things. I smiled, drank champagne, and convinced myself I had finally made it. But then the subtle changes began. Invoices I expected to see were redirected. Meetings happened without me. He told me not to waste my time on accounting, that I should focus purely on the creative side. My name started disappearing, first from documents, then from proposals, and finally from the company's own website. The day I walked in to find my office locked and my name scraped off the front door, I felt a cold, dizzying panic. The new sign, Grayson Creative Solutions, gleamed in the sunlight like it was mocking me. Daniel didn't even look up when I burst into his office. He simply gestured to the contract I had signed and explained, calmly, that I had transferred majority ownership to him in exchange for his help. He owned the business. He owned my designs. He even owned my portfolio. When I left, I carried only my laptop bag. The office I had built was gone. The clients I had nurtured for years were now his. I didn't sleep for nights on end, replaying every moment I'd trusted him, every document I'd signed without suspicion. Shame was a constant knot in my stomach, but underneath it, a different feeling began to take root, something sharp and focused. I wasn't going to crawl away. I was going to get it back. Daniel had one fatal flaw, his arrogance. He thought I was finished. He thought that without a company name, I was nothing. Quietly, I reached out to former clients, those who knew my work, those who'd trust me over him if they knew the truth. I kept it subtle. No dramatic revelations, no begging, just promises of quality work, personal attention, and a better price. Slowly, the jobs trickled in. I started working from my apartment, then a tiny rented office that smelled faintly of mildew. Every project I completed was a brick in the foundation of something bigger. While I rebuilt, I kept my eyes on him. I knew his patterns. He couldn't resist taking big risks if they promised a big reward. Eventually, the opportunity I'd been waiting for came. Through a mutual contact, I learned he was pitching to a prestigious luxury brand, a contract so valuable it could erase his debts and catapult him into a higher echelon of the industry. But I also knew his team wasn't capable of producing the kind of work this client demanded. That was my opening. Using a shell company with no traceable link to me, I approached him as a small but talented creative agency. I claimed to specialize in high-end branding and offered my services for the pitch. Predictably, he took the bait. We produced a concept so stunning it practically guaranteed the client would sign. Every draft, every email, every timestamp was meticulously documented in my name. The morning of the big presentation, I made my move. I contacted the brand directly, revealed my identity, and provided proof that the work Daniel planned to present as his own was mine, created without my consent. The brand, furious at the deception, canceled his meeting on the spot. Instead, they invited me to present the work personally. By the end of that week, the contract was mine. The fallout was beautiful in its inevitability. The story spread through the industry like wildfire. Daniel Grayson, the man who built his empire on stolen ideas, exposed for trying to pass off another's work. Clients began pulling out of their contracts. Investors stopped returning his calls. By the end of the quarter, Grayson Creative Solutions was gutted, an empty nameplate on a locked office door. Months later, I spotted him in a corner cafe. He looked smaller somehow, hunched over his coffee as if trying to fold himself out of sight. I could have walked up to him, could have said something cutting, but I didn't need to. He didn't deserve my words. I walked past with my head high, knowing he had lost everything, not because I had destroyed him, but because he had underestimated me. He cheated me out of everything once. But in the end, I didn't just take it back. I made sure he'd never do it to anyone again. When I left the office that day, my name ripped from the wall and my keycard deactivated, I walked without looking back. My body was moving, but inside, something had gone very still. People talk about anger like it's fire, hot, explosive, impossible to control. But what I felt was cold, heavy, patient. Daniel thought I would vanish, licking my wounds in some forgotten corner of the industry. That's what most people do when someone like him strips them bare. But I knew men like Daniel. They didn't just crave victory, they needed an audience for it. He wasn't content with having beaten me. He needed the world to believe I had been small all along, that he had plucked me from obscurity and given me everything I'd ever had. Fine. If that was the story he wanted, I'd let him believe it. For now. I started small. A friend owed me a favor, so I worked from a corner of their co-working space. Cheap rent, no questions. My laptop became my entire office. I took small jobs, ones Daniel would scoff at, but I treated them like gold. Every invoice I sent out was another brick in the foundation I was rebuilding. And all the while, I kept my ear to the ground. I cultivated contacts, not just in design, but in PR, marketing, event management. I wanted eyes and ears everywhere Daniel moved. It didn't take long to learn his secrets. He was growing fast, but not carefully. He'd overpromised to investors, burned through cash on flashy campaigns, and was juggling deadlines he couldn't meet. He was leaning heavily on a reputation for brilliance that wasn't his to begin with, mine had built it. That's when I began planting the seeds. A whisper to a supplier that Daniel was slow to pay his bills. A quiet mention to an industry journalist about a few creative similarities between his campaigns and others in the market. A casual comment at a networking event that I'd heard his investors were getting nervous. Nothing direct, nothing traceable, just little fractures in the glass of his perfect image. But my real play came when I learned about the luxury brand pitch. It was the golden ticket, the kind of deal that could wipe his debts clean and cement him as a top-tier player. And it was exactly the kind of project he couldn't actually deliver on without outside help. I created a phantom company, one that looked boutique, exclusive, and dripping with creative talent. I had a website, a portfolio cobbled together from unused designs, even a team made up of aliases and fake LinkedIn profiles. I let him find me. I let him think he discovered some hidden gem. We worked together for weeks. Every meeting, every concept review, I sat there as someone else, professional, courteous, forgettable, while inside, I was taking him apart piece by piece. He trusted me completely because, why wouldn't he? In his mind, I was just another tool in his belt, someone to be used and discarded. When the pitch materials were perfect, when they were polished so finely they could blind a client, I made my move. I didn't just go to the brand with proof the work was mine. I fed them the truth about Daniel, his ownership disputes, the contracts he'd twisted, the people he'd left broken. I gave them documents, emails, signed agreements. They weren't just rejecting his pitch, they were blacklisting him entirely. The moment the brand called to cancel his presentation, I knew the dominoes had started falling. One client pulled out, then another. Then an investor who had been his safety net suddenly stopped answering his calls. Within 6 months, Grayson Creative Solutions was a ghost. The office space was gone. The website was offline. His phone number had changed. The last time I saw him, it was by accident. A cold afternoon, the cafe window fogged from inside. He was sitting alone, unshaven, staring at a laptop screen like it might tell him how to fix his life. He looked smaller, as if the air had been let out of him. I stood outside for a long moment, watching. I could have walked in, could have told him exactly how I'd done it, every seed, every step, every cut that bled him dry without him noticing. But I didn't, because the truth was he didn't matter anymore. I had my life back, my work, my reputation. And Daniel Grayson was nothing but a cautionary tale whispered about in the back rooms of networking events. He cheated me out of everything. But in the end, I didn't just take it back. I made him disappear.